he's on the staff of the National Constitution Center, and he is a board member of the American Revolution Roundtable in Philadelphia.
Currently the president, sir.
Well, I think I better re-up because that's a fine organization.
I'll see you before you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. What a delight to be among all of you good folks who keep the memories of the American Revolution so alive. You talk about your organization being perhaps 90 years old. I have stockings older than 90 years. But, let's hope for the 100. But I'd like to give a toast if you just charge your glasses real quickly. And you can translate this to the current situation in politics. To the enemies of our country, may they have cobweb bridges, a porcupine saddle, a hard-trotting horse, and an eternal journey. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Does anyone know how old I was in 2006? 100. Good heavens, that's a compliment.
300.
300. Very good. So that would make in 2013, I would be 307 years old. Now, does that raise an obvious question in your mind? How can a 307-year-old man be speaking to you today? All right, I'd like to tell you just a few things about my life and help you to perhaps understand this. I was born in Boston, New England in the year 1706. I was birthed into a rather large family, my position being number 15 of 17 children. My father was a chandler. Does anyone know what a chandler does? Chandler. I don't believe they do it as a skill anymore. A chandler makes candles and soap. And what did they make candles and soap from in my day? Lard, fat, that's right. My father used to carry or push a wheelbarrow to the slaughterhouses, and they would load in several shovels full of fat, and he would take it back. It's not pleasant topics for lunch, but they would boil it down, and then he would skim off the impurities and use that to form candles and make soap. Well, he wanted me to go into this business as a boy. In my day, at the age of 10, a man became an apprentice in a trade, which means you begin working with a skilled craftsman. When you reach the stage where you could perform the skill well enough, you'd open your own business. Well, my father wanted me to become a chandler at the age of 10. And I tried my best to do that. I worked for him for about a year, just couldn't stand it anymore. If you can imagine the smell of boiling fat and such, it was not pleasant. So I looked for other work to do, and to make a very long story short, by the age of 12, I signed a contract with my older brother, James, who was 9 years my senior, to learn to be a printer. I had a 9-year contract that I signed at the age of 12 to learn to be a printer. Now, this is an awful long time. Once again, I entered it with the best of intentions and worked very hard in the early years. And I learned my skills rather quickly. I became a very talented printer. Well, I always fancied myself to be a good writer. And I would write stories and such and hand them to my brother very proudly. He'd read them, and with the prerogative of an older brother, he would immediately crumple them up and throw them to the floor. Well, I knew I was a better writer than he gave me credit for being, so I decided to pull a ruse on him. One night, after he had gone home, I wrote a letter, and I signed the letter, Silence Dogood. And in this letter, I had created a character, a lady who lived in the outskirts of Boston, whose name was Silence Dogood. She was very outspoken. She had a lot of opinions about things, and she wasn't shy about telling her opinion. Oh, she criticized Harvard students. She criticized the hypocrisy of the clergy in Boston. She criticized ladies' clothing styles, all sorts of things. But I wrote this letter, and I signed it Silence Dogood, stepped out of the shop, closed the door, and I folded the letter in thirds and inserted it under the door of the shop. Well, the next morning came, my brother James came to the shop, took the padlock off, came in, picked up the letter, read it, and I saw a smile come to his face. He called his other colleagues over, they looked at it, and I saw them smile too. I had the exquisite pleasure of listening to them discuss whether to put it on the front page of his newspaper, which they eventually did. Well, I was so encouraged by this that I proceeded to do this a total of 14 times over the next several months, 13 more letters. Now, after the 14th letter, my ego got the best of me. I couldn't hold my pride anymore, and I finally admitted to him that I was the author of the letters. Do you think think he was upset about that? Yes, he was. He was very, very angry with me. And that's when he began to berate me and yell at me and actually beat me. And looking back on my life, this is the beginning of my opinion of arbitrary power, always being resistant to arbitrary power. Well, at the age of 17, after about 5 years of working with my older brother, I could stand this no longer. I decided to run away from Boston and find printing work of my own. I first went to New York City and looked for work in New York. But New York was called New Amsterdam at the time. It was mostly Dutch. And no one was printing in English, and I couldn't find enough work. So I came to Philadelphia. Now, I arrived in Philadelphia in 1723. Philadelphia was a magnificent city, the crown jewel of the colonies. It was the busiest city, the most cosmopolitan, shipping capital and such, a magnificent, huge city. Big cities need good printers. I was a very well-trained printer, and I found immediate work. But once again, to shorten the story, by the age of 22, I owned my own print shop. Remarkably early in that day for a man to own his own business. Now, I made a great deal of money in printing. I happen to be a very talented printer, if I do say so myself. Besides the usual job work of printing, which is printing apartment leases, bills of lading for ships, insurance forms, all things like that, there were two items that I sold that helped me to make a great deal of money. The first was a newspaper. Does anyone know the name of the newspaper?
Gazette. Philadelphia
Pennsylvania
Gazette.
Gazette. I heard someone say that. Magnificently written, if I do say so myself. For me. And I'll start with the more common ones here. A penny saved is very good. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man. Excellent. 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Fish and visitors stink after 3 days. Keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut afterwards. Distinct words of wisdom. I wrote a number of proverbs about moderation in various aspects of life. Talking about moderation in food. Eat to live, not live to eat. If you wish to lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals. Well, makes very good sense. Energy and persistence conquer all. Also true and very wise to this day. I made observations about physicians and the medical profession. I was talking to some physicians at my table, and some of these sayings still hold true. He is the best physician that knows the worthlessness of the most medicines. Very wise. He is a fool who makes his physician his heir. And God heals, and the doctor takes the fee. Another one. I also had commentary about lawyers. I had a lawyer on the other side of me here. A countryman between 2 lawyers is like a fish between 2 cats. And then I had a little poem that I'd like to read really quickly about lawyers. This is one of my favorites. The benefit of going to law. 2 beggars traveling along, one blind, the other lame, picked up an oyster on the way, to which they both laid claim. The matter rose so high that they resolved to go to law, as often richer fools have done who quarrel for a straw. A lawyer took it straight in hand, who knew his business was to mind nor one nor the other side, but to make the best of the cause. As always in the law's the case, so he his judgment gave. And lawyer-like he thus resolved what each of them should have. Blind plaintiff, lame defendant, share the law's impartial care. A shell for you, a shell for thee, the middle is the lawyer's fee. So I made a great deal of money. Let me just do one more that always gets a groan from the audience. I would write little poems in here, too. When man and woman die, as poets sung, his heart's the last part moves, her last The tongue. That has gotten the same groan for centuries. But I made a great deal of money. I sold more than 10,000 copies of that book every year for a total of 25 years. Now, by the year 1748, I was able to actually retire from the printing business. Remarkable in that day for a man to retire. Men did not ever retire. Very seldom made enough money to even consider it. But by the age of 42, I was able to step away from the printing business. And if you lived to be 50 or 55 years old in the 18th century, you were considered to be an old man. I was 42 at this time, and I was quite wealthy. I figured, well, let me step back from my work. I've worked hard enough. Let me do some scientific experimentation, things I was getting interested in. Perhaps I might live another 5 or 10 years. Little did I know that was the midpoint of my life. I lived to be 84 years old. So at the age of 42, I stepped away from printing. I began to do work in the field of natural philosophy, which is what you would now call science. The natural philosophers were gentlemen who had enough money and interest to explore the natural world. What was one of the first things that I became very interested in? Electricity. Yes, indeed. Nothing had ever fascinated me as much as electricity. Now, back in that day, one of the things that intrigued me was lightning. Most people thought that lightning was an act of God. If God was angry with you, he would throw a lightning bolt down and strike those with whom he was displeased. I looked at lightning and I didn't quite believe that. As a matter of fact, I looked at static electricity, which was a common phenomenon that nobody knew where it came from or how to control it, but they did recognize it. If you shuffle across a carpet and touch a metal doorknob, a little spark would jump across. And I observed, I think, 12 or 15 similarities between that spark and lightning up in the sky. Forgotten. As soon as you are dead and rotten, then write things worth the reading, or do things worth the writing. And I thank you very much.
I'd like you to answer one of them I picked up on the internet, so I don't trust it too much, but I'll go with that one first. Beer is proof God wants us to be happy.
Beer is proof that God loves us and wishes us to be happy.
That is something
Excellent.
you said. Is that something you
Not
said?
much. It is. Well,
not just now.
Truth be Truth be told, I originally said that about wine. I made a lot of reflections about wine. One of the reflections I made about wine was that God, in His wisdom, created the human elbow at just the right distance from the mouth, such that you could raise a glass of wine and bring it directly to the mouth. Had it been created longer, you would have poured the wine over your shoulder. If it was shorter, you would have dumped it on your shirt. But the arm is exquisitely designed to bring wine directly to the mouth. And since then, they have brought that over to the realm of beer. But I originally did say that about wine.
Okay, very good. My second quote, New Jersey is a keg tapped at both ends.
I don't remember saying that, but I do agree with that.
I remember reading about it, and I don't know if it was you or another, it might have been Thomas Paine or another great thinker of the day, but, New Jersey has always suffered the wrath of being inferior to New York on one end and inferior to Philadelphia on the other end. And, I just wanted to know if that was the same back in your day.
I don't believe, well, it certainly was in the time of the Revolution. New Jersey was the city. I think there were more battles in New Jersey, is that correct? Yes.
I'm saying that wrong.
Oh, thank you,
For
sir.
your philanthropic, I'm saying that wrong.
Philanthropic.
That's it, for your society.
Yes, indeed.
You didn't mention that when you were president of the Philadelphia.
The American Philosophical Society.
That's what I was trying to say. Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, that's my blue power coming in. To you, and we put it in your alter ego's name.
Excellent.
And if you don't like it, I'll send you another one with Ben Franklin's name.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
And thank you very much.
First president, Reynold T. Hall, he was a rear admiral, served with Admiral Dewey in the Philippines. He donated his sword at the time of his presidency or at the time of his death. I'm not really 100% sure. But for a couple years, our chapter would ceremoniously hand over the presidency to the new incoming president, and it would be his sword for 2 years to pass on to the next incoming president. And where better but Haddonfield, where we started 90 years ago, to restart this tradition that I hope grows, and it's going to be your job to let it grow, Harry. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, very good.